we followed very keenly issues around the arrest of a private legal practitioner that generated some public furore, and I'm referring to lawyer Martin Kpebu, and his arrest by the special prosecutor. We also followed keenly issues around the WASI results and how, for the first time in a long time, or you can say, comparatively to previous years, there was a significant drop in terms of results performance in the core maths and social studies. A lot of people feel social studies is like pretty much, an easy subject, right? So why they feel, of course, GS would bring that bombshell of a getting it right sets of facts, and of course, it didn't go down well with the previous government. We saw the back and forth with regards to, comparison on the. Of course, the World Cup draws will happen all the way in the USA, where Ghana has been paired with England, Croatia, and Panama. So that promises to be very, very exciting as well for the 2026 World Cup. And many other stories, of course. The presidency on Friday, which was a holiday, also honored farmers. Abraham Eduse, who owns, I don't know the word to describe the kind of farm he has, but basically everything you need, is basically on his farms, from livestock to farm produce. And, he was adjudged National Best Farmer at the 41st National Farmers Day event, which took place at Ho in the Volta region. Guess what? He's 82, but he's still going in very strong. So all of those and more in Parliament, to conversations around the procurement of the presidential jets became very topical after Parliament agreed to the procurement of military helicopters and a presidential jet. The president, as we know, currently is in Doha in Qatar for a high-level summit, and he's there together with other high-level government officials, including the foreign affairs minister, some members of parliament, and other aides at the presidency. So we'll try and bring you all of the lowdown on that particular visit and more. But I'll take you straight to citynewsroom.com, where the big stories have all been captured very well for your consumption. Again, I want to remind viewers that the ChannelOne News app is also live. So if you are looking for your one-stop center for everything news-related, everything video news-related, everything public service announcements related. For example, we know that the Ofankon-Sawam stretch in parts have been closed down to traffic. If you didn't know this, ChannelOne News app is where you can be getting all of those timely information. So go onto the Google Play Store, click on the install button, download it, and you're pretty much good to go. So guys, please share the word out there on the ChannelOne News app for us. Great. The citynewsroom.com is reporting that Akusi crash kills 2 female prison officers, 2 others injured. That's some tragic story coming in from Akusi. Moving on, GAWU backs Mahama's buy local policy, calls for public oversight. Some other stories here. In Amenfi West, farmers adopt tree planting to save cocoa yields. Moving on, in the Bono region, remove speed ramps on Atebubu Kajaji Road. Drivers are calling on government. In the anti-corruption space, Edem Senanu, who is a member of the anti-corruption coalition, is calling, says that calls to abolish the office of the special prosecutor is troubling. And this is in relation to some comments in Parliament by the majority and the minority on the possible scrapping of the office of the special prosecutor. GISEU deepen security partnerships to strengthen Ghana's northern borders. Also here, IGP leads show of force with new armored vehicles. Ghana unveils $20 billion plan to strengthen climate adaptation. Some other story here, CDD Ghana, politicians oppose OSP to control prosecutions. I won't present corruption evidence to OSP subordinates. Martin Kpebu, he was yesterday on the Big Issue show with Selom Adonu. Moving on, 2026 World Cup, we will use diplomatic ties to boost Ghanaian support. That's coming in from Ghana's Foreign Affairs Minister, Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa. The former General Superintendent of the Assemblies of God Church, Ghana, Professor Frimpong Manson, is in the news, and he says, fight Galamsey from pulpit, classroom, and home. Some other story here. UPSA honors late Nana Kunedo Ajiman Rawlings with posthumous doctorate. And these are the big stories on citynewsroom.com. I'll move on to channel1news.com, channel1newsonline.com. And the big story is here. Scholarship saga. Former registrar Kingsley Ajiman left £35 million debt. That's coming in from Madam Zita Benson, Her Excellency, Ghana's Foreign Affairs, or Ghana's High Commissioner to the UK. Ghana's approach to education is flawed. One Ghana movement convener, Senyo Hosi, there. He was yesterday on the Big Issue show with Selom Adonu. And still with Senyo Hosi, he says education gaps creating weak workforce. Moving on, another person who was on the Big Issue show with Selom Adonu yesterday is MPP legal team member Enoch Afuakwa, and he says Ghana needs independent education commission for bold reforms. Interesting thoughts there by Enoch Afuakwa. And on the calls for the removal of the special prosecutor, Martin Pebu, who is at the center of all the ongoing, talk and controversy, if you want to say. Yesterday, again on the Big Issue, said that he will petition Mahama next week on further evidence against some petitions against the removal of the special prosecutor, Kisi Ejaben. Inus Afuseni, Kpebu's manhandling by OSP unjustified. Also here, Kpebu dares Kisi Ejaben to sue over corruption claims. CDD Ghana scrapping OSP threatens democracy and accountability. Moving on, OSP crucial for Ghana's anti-corruption fight. That's from Senyo Hosi. Parents contribute to Wasi cheating culture. CDD Ghana's Kojo Pumpuni Asante yesterday also on the Big Issue show made these remarks. 2025 Wasi education system needs comprehensive review. Franklin Kujo there. Probe 2025 Wasi declined. Franklin Kujo, who is Imani Africa's president, to government. And like I mentioned earlier to you, Mahama in Qatar for Doha Forum. Channel One News Online also has the story on the two female prison officers killed in the Akuse incident. And Kofi Bento, who is vice president of Imani Africa, has said the OSP is becoming lawless. Faith and belief hindering HIV fight in Biokum West. The health directorate coming in with that one. The Zabzugo Agric officer has said resource agric departments or programs will fail, as he tells government. Irrigation processing facilities crucial for agri growth. 2025 Ashanti Regional Best Farmer has been speaking. And 2 dead, 13 injured in Enyinam Enyiresi head-on collision. And still in relation to the Farmers' Day celebration on Friday, the Mampong Hima has told or called on governments to establish a carrot processing factory in Mampong. Let me move on to the graphiconline.com. They have the story on President Mahama's arrival in Qatar for the 2025 Doha Forum. Some other stories here. U.S. jails Nigerian fraud mastermind for 20 years over nationwide bank scam. So U.S. jails Nigerian fraud mastermind for 20 years over nationwide bank scam. Some other stories here. PIAC engages market women to explain oil-funded projects. 1 killed, 27 arrested in Tamale police operation. The Ghana Medical Association calls for improved social amenities in underserved areas to attract doctors. Coach Otto Addo and Asamoah's immediate reaction as Ghana went into Group L with England, Croatia, and Panama. They were the draw that took place, the World Cup draw that took place in Washington, and they have some behind the scenes on how some of the members of Ghana's contingent reacted when the countries in the group were named. And the Interior Minister has also been speaking. He says, "Stop now or we'll track you." Interior Minister warns online fear mongers. The news center has some other big stories I want to quickly bring to you before we wrap up the news review. has... Okay, yes, they have the story on the police operation in Tamale, where one was dead or left one dead and 27 arrested. Evangelist Edward Akwesi says, my wife divorced when I became poor. On the presidential jet, apologized to Nanado. The defense committee chair in Tim Fodjo tells NDC. Accident claims 3 lives and 6 injured on Bando Road. Has HIV awareness in Ghana faded? And with it, the fear. There's an interesting article by the editor of the News Center, Elvis Darko, on the newscenteronline.com. Then Elvis Darko, formerly at the Finder newspaper, now runs the News Center. He's on Breakfast Daily with Nana Tufo Boateng every Monday at 7 a.m. to delve into the big news headlines. So that's it by way of information. Moving on to some other stories as being reported by the newscenter.com. Parliament approves Ghana-Qatar labor deal. And finally here, we won't allow you to scrap OSP. Senyo Hosi warns Parliament. And these are the big stories on the newscenter.com. So it's now a good time for me to delve into some of the big headline stories. And of course, we'll start with a rather tragic and unfortunate one. Yesterday, we spoke about a similar accident on the Enyinam-Enyiresi Road, where we called on motorists to be very cautious and very adherent to road safety rules as we approach the festive season, because we know some of the things that happen during this time, right? So again, we want to urge, please be mindful, please be respectful of other drivers and other road users, the pedestrians, the motorcyclists, right? Because, you know, if you're in your vehicle, you don't own the road. You know, it's a shared kind of property. It's for the state. So the least you can do is to be very careful and to be very mindful. Look out before that turn. You know, adhere to strict, proper driving etiquette, and I'm sure we'll all be better for it. If you have to leave or if you have to get to a certain location at a particular time, please do leave early. The alternative is not speeding on the road, right? So that we don't have to come back to some of these stories. And our condolences to the families of the 2 prison officers who have been killed in a road accident. So excerpts of the story, the big headline on citynewsroom.com, Akuse crash kills 2 female prison officers, 2 others injured. Story by Neil Ni Kanaku, who was our Eastern Regional Bureau Chief for City News and ChannelOne News. So the Akuse District Police Command has launched investigations into circumstances surrounding the tragic deaths of 2 female prison officers following a road accident early Saturday, December 6, 2025. The crash occurred between the Akuse Junction and the VRA Junction within the Akuse Township. Details of how the incident occurred, however, may remain unclear. The story goes on to say 2 male prison officers who were also in the vehicle, a Toyota Corolla with registration number GS 481717, sustained multiple fractures. They were initially taken to the Akuse Government Hospital, but were later referred to the St. Joseph Hospital in Koforidua due to the severity of their injuries. City News sources indicate that the devastating news has plunged personnel at the Akuse local prison in the Lower Manya Krobo municipality into deep shock and grief. While colleagues mourn the 2 officers who lost their lives, many are also praying for the recovery of those still receiving treatment in Koforidua. So very, very heartbreaking indeed, and want to wish the families of the 2 police officers our sincere condolences during this really, really difficult time. You know, it can be tough. Yesterday on social media, videos of the funeral of one of the prospective or the military applicants, one of the ladies who were killed who was killed during the stampede at the Ghana Forces recruitment exercise in Burma camp. The funeral was held, and really, really painful scenes, right? And we've said that we do not have to go through that again as a people or as a nation. And when service members or law enforcement lose their lives under such circumstances, it can be a very difficult moment, really, for the family and the entire nation. because these people put their lives in harm's way all the time for our sake. And we hope that the family will be given all the support they need during this really, really difficult time. And to the injured, we are hoping and praying for a speedy recovery for them. And that's it on citynewsroom.com. Moving on to some other stories as being reported on citynewsroom.com. I wanted to bring the story of President Mahama in Doha for the Doha Forum, right? I'll get it and share with you pretty shortly. But the GAWU, that's the Ghana Agricultural Workers Union, they are supporting President Mahama's call during the 41st National Farmers' Day celebrations on the need for Ghanaians to patronize buy local policy. And they've also been calling for public oversight. Now, this is why we at ChannelOne TV believe this so strongly, and it led to the creation of events like the This is Ghana Fair. It led to the creation of events like the Back to Your Village Food Festival, because we believe in the potential of the local farmer. We believe in the potential of that business within the local food or agricultural value chain. So it's great seeing institutions or associations like the General Agricultural Workers Union, jump on this bandwagon, because we maintain very strongly that our economy needs a structural shift from what has been an economy that has been largely import dependent. At a point in this nation's history, we had cause to complain about the fact that very simple items like toothpicks were being imported, right? And we've said that if we want to see the progress we've been yearning for, and to break the cycle of a 17th or a possible 18th IMF, appearance, we need to buy our own. We need to grow our own. We need to be able to produce to meet the needs of ours, or our needs as a people. And this is why we've really pushed ideas like the This is Ghana Fair, like the Agri Fair, like the Back to Your Village Food Festival, and many other events you see us do right here at ChannelOne TV and City FM. So, brief excerpts of the story still on citynewsroom.com. The General Secretary of the General Agricultural Workers Union, GAWU, Andrews Adokwe Tego, has called on Ghanaians to actively monitor President John Dramani Mahama's directive requiring all basic and senior high schools to purchase locally produced rice, maize, chicken, and eggs. Speaking on ChannelOne Newsroom on Saturday, December 6th, Mr. Tego said the compliance with the directive must be closely tracked, adding that GAWU has tasked members to oversee its implementation. He commended President Mahama for the initiative, noting that it would reduce compliance on imported food and conserve foreign exchange, while also addressing the health and economic risks associated with the excessive imports. According to Mr. Tego, the directive extends beyond the schools to other government-funded institutions, including the school feeding program, the Ghana Prison Service, the Ghana Police Service, and other state-supported programs that procure food with public funds. The story goes on to say that he emphasized the importance of public participation in monitoring the policy, which aligns with GAWU's long-standing advocacy for the consumption of made-in-Ghana foods. So these are the big story, and we hope that government will be minded to share with us. Sometimes they wait for us to get information before they want to, as in, open up, right? But government will need to also lead this charge. As we in the media push and urge for those to, or for the public to engage in, supporting local industry, supporting local farmers, government will also have a role to play, and their role they have to play is also providing the necessary investments, right? and also the little push, the little incentives for local farmers. And we saw that government held a really spectacular celebration for the Independence Farmers Day. Of course, it came with its own, on social media, some persons weren't excited with, what they saw to be a lack of attention by other government officials within the sector who traveled when they expected them to be at the Farmers' Day, but that's a whole different conversation. But the point is that government needs to incentivize farmers. Government needs to show a lot more commitment towards the cause of farmers. And it started quite well with the whole pricing for cocoa. We've now seen that government has quite handsomely also rewarded farmers who've done exceptionally well as part of the Farmers' Day celebration. So we want to see more. I think other farmers too are calling for lower taxes and an enhanced galamsey fight, which many believe is destroying their farms. It's very critical to their business. So we hope that Mr. Government is minded on those issues as well. But let me take you to the ChannelOneNews.com. I'll be bringing you stories from Senor Jose pretty shortly, but the scholarship secretariat has been under fire recently for issues around the non-payment of scholarship grants and also issues around delayed payments and a whole lot of other issues. Ghana's High Commissioner to the United Kingdom, Zita Benson, is in the news, and she said that former Registrar Kingsley Agyeman, who by the way is now Member of Parliament for Boakwa South, said, or left rather, a £35 million debt. The excerpts of the story with Ghana's High Commissioner for the United Kingdom, Saba Zita Benson, has refuted claims by former Registrar of the Scholarship Secretariat, Kingsley Agyeman, that no student was ever stranded abroad during his tenure, despite the Secretariat's inherited debt. Mr. Agyeman had earlier dismissed allegations that the accumulated £32 million liability, describing the claims as misleading and politically motivated. He maintained that he inherited a debt of about 230 million Ghana cedis, but ensured all scholarship beneficiaries remained in school. However, in a sharp rebuttal on Facebook, Zita Benson asserted that the former registrar left a £35 million debt, a burden she says continues to create hardship for the Ghanaian students in the UK. She disclosed that while £3 million of the outstanding amount has been settled, many institutions remain unpaid, with some arrears dating as far back as 2021. According to her, these figures reflect a consistent accumulation of arrears over 5 years. And not so good news for students in the UK who are seeking further education abroad. Yes, so there's a story of President Mahama in Qatar for the Doha Forum. Still on ChannelOneNewsOnline.com. President John Dramani Mahama arrived in Doha on Saturday morning, December 6th, ahead of its participation in the Doha Forum, where he is set to make 2 significant contributions. He is scheduled to deliver the opening remarks on education as justice in times of crisis and take part in a panel discussion on economic empowerment in Africa, pathways to inclusive prosperity. During his visit, President Mahama would also hold bilateral talks with His Highness Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, the Emir of Qatar. The president traveled aboard a Qatar Airways executive jet provided by the State of Qatar and is expected to return on Sunday, December 7. The Doha Forum, held annually since 2003 under the theme Diplomacy, Dialogue and Diversity, serves as a global platform for policymakers and leaders to discuss pressing international challenges and foster innovative, action-oriented solutions. So these are the big stories on ChannelOneNewsOnline.com. Maybe I should just bring you some other stories on, following the release of the 2025 WASSI results. So many issues became topical. Now, a survey was conducted among teachers in senior high schools, trying to solicit views as to why the results, particularly in core maths and English language to an extent, and also particularly social studies, didn't turn out too well. Now, according to, the country's foremost education researcher, Kofi Asare, who runs the Africa Education Watch, issues around the excessive use of phones and internet, social media, was in the news. Poor preparation came up as part of the top 4 reasons. Difficult questions, was also seen in there. And I think largely issues around poor preparation. So that has generated significant public talk because, of course, education is crucial, especially at this point in time of our lives as a nation. So it's got a lot of people talking as to what could have been the reason. We saw that statement from GS also accuse the former government of engaging in practices that directly impugns on the integrity of the WASSCE exam. Of course, that didn't go down well with the previous handlers in the education sector. Some of them took to other media channels and media platforms to respond directly to the GES, the Ghana Education Service statement that was signed by the Public Relations Officer, Daniel Fenyi. But let me just bring you some viewpoints from Senyo Hosi, who, by the way, some years ago came under intense public, criticisms over his comments around the job readiness or market readiness of some University of Ghana students. According to him, some couldn't even engage in very basic, tasks, in terms of like Word, Microsoft Word use, Excel use. Of course, a lot of people had opinions on that. So, I just want to properly situate why Senyo Hosi's views on this, the context and why he is taking this quite seriously, in terms of the issues at hand. And so Senyo Hosi, he on the big issue again yesterday said that Ghana's approach to education is flawed. Of course, on the panel, that included Kofi Asare, Enoka Fuakwa, who is an NPP legal team member. Senyo Hosi was on the panel. The CDD Ghana's research director, Dr. Kojo Asante, Pumpuni Asante, was also on the panel. Franklin Kujo, Imani Africa, was also on the panel. He's been doing a lot of work in interrogating and perusing, successive government policy on education. He's done, as a group, Imani has also done extensive work with regards to researching into the much touted free SHS policy. So they had quite some interesting views on the 2025 WASSCE results and what should be the proper approach by government in terms of education and funding for free SHS. Of course, we heard the president speak on this matter earlier in the week, where he said that the over-excessive commitment of resources to free SHS matched to the neglect of basic education is what has resulted in the poor WASSCE performances. Of course, not everybody disagrees, with the president. Others have shared different opinions, and there's a lot going on. So I'll just read excerpts of Senyo Hosi's story, then we can probably end the news review discussion here. So according to the One Ghana movement convener, Senyo Hosi, the big headline story is Ghana's approach to education is flawed. Senyo Hosi, convener of the One Ghana movement, says Ghana has not treated education with the seriousness it deserves, warning that the country risks falling behind in an increasingly competitive global environment. He argued that the national discussions often reduce education to political point scoring rather than focusing on deliberate long-term policies needed to secure the future of Ghanaian children. Core mathematics recorded the steepest decline in the 2025 WASSCE, with the A1 to C6 passes dropping from 305,000 in 2024 to 209,000 in 2025, a fall of more than 96,000. The overall pass rate stood at 48.73%, leaving more than half of candidates below the grades required for tertiary education. Nearly 1 in 4 candidates failed both core maths and social studies, heightening concerns about university eligibility. Speaking on the Big Issue show on ChannelOne TV on Saturday, Mr. Hosi said Ghana lacks a clear and sustained strategy to prepare students for global competition over the next decade. And these are the views of Senyo Hosi. He goes on to say, education gaps creating weak workforce. Senyo Hosi again on the Big Issue show. So the convener of One Ghana movement, Senyo Hosi, raised alarm over the declining quality of Ghana's workforce, linking the issue directly to gaps in the nation's education sector. According to ChannelOne, insufficient attention is being paid to the underlying factors that contribute to poor performance, particularly at the tertiary level where skills of the future workforce are shaped. He goes on to say, his comments follows the steep WASSCE decline in recent years. We know the background, but this is direct quote. There is a bigger problem we are not monitoring when it comes to poor performance, and that can be found in the universities. Who is monitoring at all? Or who is monitoring all that? I have 100 people under my belt as a workforce. We are seeking to be more productive so that we can get to 1,000 workforce. But I am telling you that the quality of our human resources is very low, and it stems from education, and there's no deliberate policy to correct it. So clearly, ChannelOne is not happy. He, aside running One Ghana movement, he also has done some work within the oil sector. He used to run Seaboard, which was like the board, bulk oil distributors, a chamber. He was CEO for that. And also, he has, he's an entrepreneur. We know that he's also into, I think, rice farming and all of that. So he has been raising this issue for quite some time now. And of course, it's got a lot of people to join in the conversation on the WASSCE result. I'd want to still stay on the WASSCE results because, like I said, it's generated some kind of public uproar. Is it as a result of government's handling of the sector, or the previous government, inactions or actions caused, an unjustified increase or better performance? And this is what has become of the conversation. It's generated into a very, very intense debate, even though generally you get the sense that a lot of the experts and analysts within the space say, see, we need proper reforms for education because we need a workforce that is ready for the job market. Everyone else is taking education serious. We can't continue to politicize some of these issues, and these are viewpoints I completely and entirely agree with. But I want to share with you what Franklin Cudjoe and I would also add CDD Ghana have been saying. So Franklin Cudjoe, he said that education system needs a comprehensive review. Again, Franklin Cudjoe is Imani Africa president, and these are his excerpts of the story as reported on ChannelOne News Online.com. President of Imani Africa, Franklin Cudjoe, has urged a comprehensive review of Ghana's education system following the significant drop in performance in the 2025 West African Senior School Certificate Examination, particularly in core maths and social studies. Speaking in an interview with Seloma Donu on Saturday on ChannelOne TV's The Big Issue show, Mr. Cudjoe stressed that the country needs a serious introspection of its education system. He highlighted challenges such as students' lack of understanding of exam content, a shortage of qualified teachers, and limited time for exam preparation. Mr. Cudjoe called for a holistic or a 360 look at the entire education sector, noting that the frequent changes in the ministers have contributed to instability in policy and implementation. And let me bring you very briefly and finally on what CDD Ghana's Dr. Kojo Asante has also said on the matter. So Director for Policy and Advocacy Engagement at CDD Ghana, Dr. Kojo Asante, has warned that the growing involvement of parents in examination malpractice has become one of the biggest threats to the integrity of the West African Senior High School Certificate Examination. Speaking on ChannelOne TV's The Big Issue show on Saturday, he described the situation as an epidemic that has escalated beyond isolated incidents and is now deeply entrenched in many communities. Dr. Asante explained that parents, often working through school authorities or local networks, actively facilitate schemes to allow parents to cheat during examination. This practice has created a dangerous culture where students believe they do not need to prepare adequately because external help will always be available. And that's the quote attributed to Dr. Kojo Asante. He noted that this expectation has fueled widespread reliance on leaked questions and cheating systems, weakening genuine academic efforts among candidates. So clearly, around the table yesterday on The Big Issue, not many were optimistic on the current approach with regards to how education in this country is being managed. I would end my news review with a comment by Martin Kpebu, who also was on the Big Issue show yesterday. And this is in relation with the ongoing controversy surrounding the office of the special prosecutor, Kisi Ejabin. And Martin Kpebu says, I'll petition Mahama next week. And that's coming in from Martin Kpebu. So private legal practitioner Martin Kpebu has revealed he intends to submit a petition to President John Dramani Mahama in the coming week, seeking the removal of the special prosecutor Kisi Ejabin from office. Martin Kpebu made a disclosure on ChannelOne TV's The Big Issue show on Saturday, December 6th. He was detained on Wednesday, 3rd December 2025, at the office of the special prosecutor following a confrontation with officers at the entrance of the headquarters. The detention occurred before investigators could begin questioning him regarding corruption allegations he made against the special prosecutor. Kpebu was later released. Now this is quote. He says, "I will present my petition in the coming week. You need to show it. You need to show it to a few people, get inputs and documents." He said, Kpebu has publicly accused the special prosecutor of corruption and abuse of office. His planned petition follows his earlier calls for the dismissal of Mr. Ajabin and 2 senior OSP officials at the office, filed charges against the former finance minister Ken Ofori-Atta and others over controversial revenue assurance contracts between the Ghana Revenue Authority and the Strategic Mobilization Ghana Limited, SML. So this week, or in the previous week, we also learned from the Office of the Government Communications Ministry, and of course being run by Member of Parliament for Asebu Kwaman Kese, Felix Ofosu-Kwakye, that 7 petitions have been brought to the presidency in relation to the removal of the EC chair, Madam Jean Mensah, and the special prosecutor, Kisi Ejabin. Now, according to the Government Communications Minister, Felix Ofosu-Kwakye, all of those petitions have been forwarded to the Chief Justice for onward review, and of course, when necessary, the processes begin on whether or not they've indeed abused the office or guilty of anything being raised in the petition. And on that note, we'll bring an end to the news review segment. If you missed any of these big stories, you could still log on to citynewsroom.com, channel1newsonline.com, and